The First World War is infamous for its horrific number of casualties, especially during the war's early months. But why? The popular idea is that aging, out-of-touch generals insisted on the use of Napoleonic tactics in a modern war, ordering droves of soldiers to charge headfirst, shoulder to shoulder into machine gun fire and artillery barrages. Is there any truth to this perception, or is it a misunderstanding entirely? While it would be incorrect to describe the opening tactics of World War I as Napoleonic, it's true that the armies of World War I would enter the conflict clinging to old ideas that would quickly be dispersed in the first months of fighting. France in particular is often ridiculed for sending troops to the field equipped with blue surcoats and baggy bright red trousers, and for equipping their famous cuirassiers with steel plate armor, their appearance almost unchanged since Waterloo 100 years earlier. Obviously, French generalship of the period didn't see camouflage as important. In fact, they outright believed against it. It was thought that the flamboyant uniforms, evoking the national colors, enhanced the soldiers' morale, boosted their aggressiveness, and made them more courageous in the face of enemy fire. Essentially, the French army was by design inconspicuous to force itself into offensive action. The President of France in 1913, Clement Fallières, would remark that the offensive alone is suited to the temperament of French soldiers. We are determined to march straight against the enemy without hesitation. As it had the rest of Europe, the cult of the offensive had swept over France. The cult of the offensive is the name given to the military thought pervasive throughout Europe by the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Conventional wisdom among European generalship held that the advantages inherent in the attack were so great that defense was obsolete, fit only for edge case scenarios in which offense was deemed impractical. The obsession with the offensive at the expense of the technical respect for the defensive bordered on mysticism. French General Ferdinand Foch supported his assertion that any improvement in munitions would invariably favor the attacker with the dubiously logical exercise in numbers. If 2,000 men attacked 1,000, each man firing his rifle once a minute, the balance in favor of the attackers was 1,000 bullets a minute. But if both sides could fire 10 rounds a minute, the balance in favor of attackers would increase to 10,000, giving the attack the overall advantage. Prussian General Friedrich von Bernhardi claimed that the larger the army, the more disadvantaged the defending side would be, given the supposed difficulty of moving masses in reaction to an oncoming force. France, perhaps more than any other nation, placed extreme emphasis on the equalizing power of morale over defensive firepower. The general consensus among the French brass was that merely assuming the role of the attacker would double the morale and energy of the soldiers, and it was this energy, or vital force, that would ultimately lead to victory. If this sounds like pseudoscience, that's because it is. Weirdly enough, this concept of vital force, or élan vital as it was known, was formulated by French spiritualist and philosopher Henri Bergson to explain evolution. To vastly oversimplify things, élan was an all-powerful unifying impulse that influenced organisms to grow and adapt to the conditions of life. This was picked up by military minds of the day, many of whom had attended Bergson's lectures at the College of France and given a nationalist slant. The indomitable will of the French people and army would win the day, no matter the odds. All these theories and hypothetical combat scenarios are plagued by blind assumptions. They disregard the magnifying potential of terrain and fortification factors, and ignore developments in battlefield communications that have made giving orders to thousands of men much, much quicker. They assume that an army's size has a direct relationship with its potential firepower, and Foch's model is predicated on the fact that the soldiers would bother standing face to face, firing 10 rifle rounds a minute at one another in the first place. And almost no one would give the machine gun the respect it would soon earn. So, why did they think this? How could it be that the musings of a philosopher with no military experience could creep their way into national military doctrine? How could seemingly educated and experienced generals have been so blind to what seems to us common sense? It's not as though the French, or any other European generalship, had no examples of the faults of their ideology. One need only ask the Sudanese about the power of morale over the machine gun. Part of the problem lies in a lack of examples France found relevant to themselves. Obviously, Sudanese tribesmen couldn't overpower machine guns with zealous, motivated troops and a massive numbers advantage. They were tribal savages, not French. As far as examples the French were willing to learn from go, there hadn't been a continent-spanning European war since the age of Napoleon. Few military men in positions of authority truly grasped the magnitude of the firepower revolution in the past 10 years, let alone 40. From her last major war against Prussia in 1870, France learned only the wrong lessons. Because of their mechanical superiority in arms, France adopted almost a fully defensive posture in the war. They hoped to force the Prussians into attacking heavily fortified positions, only to be destroyed by the firepower of the chassepot rifle and the mitrailleuse machine gun. Needless to say, this didn't work, and France was defeated in short order. Prussia owed its victory more to its brilliant mobilization and forward-thinking general staff, who supported their offensives with state-of-the-art artillery and supportive flanking maneuvers that exploited the static nature of the French army. But the French walked away from Sedan with only one prevailing insight: attack to excess. The relative inaction and defensive posture of the French army during the war was seen as a major, if not the most important factor in the Prussian victory. Only a return to Napoleonic traditions of skillful maneuver and violent attack at the decisive point could bring success. There were detractors, of course, but it was senior officers who won out. The Army regulations of 1884 rather forebodingly instructed troops to march forward with head held high, regardless of losses, under the most violent fire, even against strongly defended entrenchments, and seize them. World War I would shatter all of Europe's preconceptions. The blind veneration of the unstoppable power of the offensive would die along with the millions of soldiers who bore the ideology into battle. France quickly realized the folly of the traditional uniforms and adopted the horizon blue in early 1915. It would take almost 4 years of near-stagnant trench warfare for new offensive tactics to evolve into their modern combined arms forms, and the last vestiges of Napoleon would be wiped away forever, at least on the battlefield.